I am working on a project that requires a transformer in the ratio of 128 or 1 to 40. I've always wanted to make my own transformer, and this is the perfect opportunity to learn how transformers work and what it takes to make one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go smash that subscribe button and the bell's notification button to get notifications when a new video gets uploaded. I first tried to find one to purchase. They were either too big or too expensive. I could only find super simple machines and machines that use electronic components to count. I wanted something mechanical, but ended up deciding to wind one by hand. So I gather up some parts and wires and I start winding. The first coil, it was easy. I went slow and it came out really good, really clean. The next coil was in the thousands of turns. I wanted something to rotate it faster with. I got my hand drill and note to keep track of how many turns I did. I'm adding a little piece of red tape to a single spot, so every time it goes around, that's a turn. I'm about to count 2,000 turns on this transformer. To keep track of the turns, I have this piece of paper right here. I'm only marking one strike every 100 turns. The first 1,000 turns went by relatively fast and pretty clean. But have you ever counted sheep and fallen asleep? I fell asleep while winding it. I lost track of turns on where I was and even ripped the fragile wire. I tried again, but same results. I dozed off. So I decided to make some coffee and start looking for a machine on Thingiverse. I want the machine to be all mechanical, simple, has a crank handle, it can count up to 1,000, and the minimal amount of parts. I wanted to save some time. I looked for something I can just modify or use as a base. I found this button pressing counter at Thingiverse by Brian Law. He converted it and modified so it would be 3D printable. The original concept of the mechanism was made by Matthias Wandel. His channel is about woodworking, taking more of engineering perspective on things.
Well, I've built various frivolous projects at times, but this project, this is the one that counts.
Links on the description to projects and people's pages. Go check them out. The counter, it only counts to 100ths. I needed to count to the thousands. I'll add an additional number wheel. Let's go print this and see how it works, then modify it. So first I just assembled it, saw how things work. After playing around with it for a while, I took down notes and decided to take it apart and start working on modifications. I cut off the button press connectors so it's just completely flat. I'm gonna keep the wheels the same size, but I'm gonna make the whole shape of it a lot bigger. With most of my ideas, I always start with a very rough drawing. I then elaborate it and add more to it as I progress. I then start up Fusion 360. I start with removing parts I didn't need and started to add to it, making it bigger and modifying the way it counts. At first I wanted the machine to be enclosed, but I want this to be the test model where I can just move things around. The size of the machine ended up being decided by the fact that I used the whole bed on my 3D printer to print out the walls. All of the large parts are printed out in 1mm size nozzle. I didn't print all new parts, took some from the original, conserving some filament. I cut off all the protruding pieces of plastic from this side, except for the little stopper. Here's a comparison with the new version. Most of the parts are done printing. I cleaned the parts by removing any excess plastic and deformities. The rod from the original plans were too thin, so I got a bigger diameter of a rod. I marked the length I need, and I'm just going to cut them up. I cut rods to length and filed the ends so they wouldn't be sharp. I didn't want the part to slip out, so I hit the end of the metal until it mushroomed out, so the part would not slip out. I cut out 2 circle separators from a milk jug, so the handle turns freely without grinding. I secured the handle with hammering it into place with no glue, and test how it turns. While I put some parts together, I am printing more. Here's the type of bearings I'm using. I am adding bearings in by pressing them in, being careful I don't press the bearing too hard that it will break them. I had to add a sleeve so the rod can fit in. I press in the rest of the bearings. I glue in some parts, but I need to drill some small holes in the rod to keep parts from moving. Glue is not enough to keep them in place. I'm assembling it and taking notes on modifications I need to add or change. I check how the parts are coming together. There's a lot of wobble in the wheels. It's slipping numbers and giving me errors. I'm going to take it apart and reprint new wheels. The wheel that makes the numbers turn is really thin, so it wobbles a lot. I'm gonna have to reprint this too. Maybe even add a gear and a backing to it. I'm using the rod to hold the gears in place so they don't slip. This wheel doesn't have the gear yet. As you can see, all the other ones are nice and stiff. It's nice to see that it's working. I take some more measurements after I added the gears. I want to make sure there's no wobble in those wheels so there's no skipping. I continue building while new parts are being printed. All of the large parts are being printed out with a 1mm nozzle. I finished building it, but one of the walls is warped so it doesn't line up properly. There's a lot of little things I need to fix on it. So I dismantle it and take my notes and make new parts. It has now been many versions later. I modify the plans again. I have stopped keeping track of what version I'm on. My 3D printer has been running almost non-stop for the last week, printing all new parts for the project. I really like how the numbers are coming out with the 1mm nozzle. All the parts are coming out really nice with the 1mm nozzle. While installing these parts, the rod broke at a weak point. I had to recut a new piece and drill it out and install it. I drill out the hole so the rod rotates smoothly and has no wobble. Look at the difference between the wobble on the old one and the new one. I begin putting parts together, adding glue, making sure everything is secure as I go along. I fast forward through the build. You've already seen me build it a couple of times. All that's left to do now is to paint the numbers, cut a base, paint the base. It's by no means a fast machine or can make tons of transformers, but it'll help me wind one to a couple very easily. I didn't think I had it right here. I should have painted the wheels before I assembled it. I had to turn this until I painted all of them. It took about an hour. Here's the final result. It looks great. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how I will be using the transformer in another project in the near future, go subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss out on my new videos. While you're there, check out my other videos, comment, and like. Thank you.